Hi, friends. Hello, the world. Welcome to this episode of Tools for Transitioning Humanitarians, and your host is Salomon. And today, the topic that I want to talk about that is so common that we don't really even see how much we're being influenced by is the way that we're seeing ourselves, and how we're seeing ourselves is affecting the way that we're transitioning, affecting the way that we're making decisions, affecting our worldview, affecting what's possible, what's not possible, and all of this because of how we see ourselves. And that's the topic that I want to talk about, where I will be using my own examples of some of my clients to showcase how this affects what kind of then choices we make, and then what life we live, what impact we do, how we live it, and then the outcomes of it. And of course, we'll be also talking about what to do then if we no longer want to see ourselves that way. And then how do we change it, right? So this is a topic that I want to talk about because I see so often that we as humanitarians are shying away from transitioning, shying away from living the life that we want to because of how we see ourselves. So here is my example that I want to showcase that I have used in so many other ways, but here I want to focus on certain things, the way that I have seen myself, and then how that used to affect the way that I showed up in my life, how I lived my life, right? So when I started my humanitarian career, I used to see myself most of the time as someone who is very insecure, as someone who feels very inferior to others, especially to colleagues coming from countries that I considered more superior in my head, because in the way that I would uh, like imagine them being superior is I would imagine them being more smart than me. They are better equipped at doing the job. They are better at writing. They're better at this. They're better at that. And I would always see myself in view of how I'm not like them, and therefore something is wrong with me, right? So oftentimes when we see ourselves in that inferior mode. And of course, our history and our socializing, our programming does not help, right? But I used to even grew up thinking that people who are of this ethnic group or of this group who are in the um, superior role, that I used to believe that they are better, they're more intelligent, they have everything together, and I'm not, and feeling like I'm always behind, or feeling like I'm not as good, or I can never be as good as them. This is how I used to see myself, right? So this was one of the biggest ways that I used to see myself. And therefore, when I saw myself that way that it would show up in my life and my work is I would always see myself as someone's assistant. And I'm not saying that this is wrong or you shouldn't be doing this. I'm just saying that how that type of identity that I used to hold to be true, that identity used to always tell me, like, I can only be someone's assistant. I can only execute things. You tell me what to do and how to do it, or you tell me what needs to get done, and I go and do it. And I would always see myself as someone who's following someone's lead. I would never consider myself as someone that I can lead other people either. In the micro ways that it has shown up in my life is that I used to always take their opinion as being the main opinion, their opinion being the only truth, and my opinion being that it doesn't really count, right? So therefore, in meetings and in discussions, if I would have to say something, I would say it like very quickly, just get it over with so that I can just feel like I just get things over with instead of, so I'm sorry about this interruption. So I would then take their opinion more. Their opinion would count at every cost, and my opinion didn't, right? So therefore, I would just rush through saying the things and then just feeling like I need to hide again. right? So you can relate to this as I would just be in the meetings saying only the things that I would say because I feel like I have to, and otherwise I just need to hide because other people have better things to say. Other people's opinions are more valuable than mine because again of the way that I would see myself is how I'm inferior to them, right? So I'm inferior to um, in comparison to others. Therefore, I can only say the things that is absolute minimum or absolutely required, and then I don't. I just shut up. Another ways that it would show up is I would always feel like I should be grateful for all of this what I'm experiencing, or like I should be grateful that I already have this position, that I'm earning this money, or that I'm having this position where I'm doing this work, and I should even like work harder and work 24/7 because that way I can show how great I am. Otherwise, I don't even believe that I'm great at what I'm doing. Or another ways it would show is my like inferiority, the way that I would see myself, right? That this would show is that is as long as other people tell how great I am, then it counts. But I can't really say that I am great because unless it comes from someone else, then it doesn't really count, right? So these are the ways that shows up. And then what the consequences or the outcomes of this is that in the outcome of how this would show up is that I would go and burn out a lot because I would always try to please everyone because of the belief that they are what they're saying is right, what they're saying is totally makes sense, and this is all my fault, and I should just take everything as my fault and then like uh, keep proving how grateful I should be. Um, Another way that the consequence of this is that I would never really go for higher positions unless I am asked or I am offered that job. In some ways, I'm grateful that I have always been offered a job to go and apply for, but in other cases, I also wonder how much I could have even applied for bigger or higher positions if I wanted to, why I have never done that, or I would always see myself as someone who's junior, someone who is not really ready for this, even though I felt like I knew that job so much better than other people, but I didn't really see myself as deserving or being there, right? So you can see that how much of how we see ourselves can affect the way that we show up in our workplace, affect how we discuss with others, how we even say and share our opinions, what kind of jobs we apply for, what kind of um, promotions we go for or don't go for depends on how we see ourselves, right? I want to give some examples from my clients as well so you can see for them how this is showing up so that it's not only my example, right? So one of my clients that we work on the identity as a lot is where she sees herself as someone who cannot handle failures, that she sees herself as mistakes are so bad and she can't really handle those mistakes, and she sees herself as someone who's anxious, who panics a lot because of being afraid of the mistakes that she makes, and she feels like she shouldn't be making these mistakes, she should have learned by now, and she just sees herself as someone who needs to um, like show so much more of why she deserves that position because she sees herself all the time as someone who doesn't really deserve that position. And maybe she will be found out one day that she didn't really deserve that position kind of place, right? Another client of mine, the way that she sees herself as I am like she sees herself as very assertive, very good at leading teams, but she doesn't really see herself as a leader. She doesn't really see herself as so good at leading so many people at the same time. She also doesn't see herself as someone who can manage her leadership role and position, as well as her love life and her health. And therefore, she sees herself as someone who needs to just give up on one or the other, right? So there needs to be like two, three things, and she needs to, excuse me, juggle between this is I can do, this is the thing I can focus on, and all the other things I can't focus on, or I cannot, I don't have the energy for, right? So as you can see that when we see ourselves as someone who does not really um, have the energy and time or capacity even to manage our personal lives and our health, then of course we will never really even attempt to go and try to do something about them, because we just see ourselves as someone who is so good at job and everything else we can't really handle at the same time. Or maybe we have this belief that we can't really have it all at the same time, so therefore one thing needs to give, right? So, and when we see ourselves that way, then obviously we continue proving ourselves this to be true, and therefore at any given time, our job will take the priority most of the time, because there are other people involved. We have accountability, and as soon as there are structures in place, right? So therefore, we are so more likely to go to the job part instead of understanding and finding out how we then want to go and make the health part and the family part work the way we want to as well. And therefore we don't have uh, or we don't even go for building relationships, or even if we do, we just do it ad hoc here and there maybe, and then we don't really pursue or commit to them because of the identity that we hold, that we don't really know how to have it all, and therefore we just, when it comes to giving in on something, we just give in on the part that feels so dominant in that time period of our lives. So when we understand how much it impacts, how much our own way of seeing ourselves impact our lives, then we start understanding we need to do something about it, right? But the problem often is that we don't really see that this is the identity that we're holding to be true. We don't really often see that this is how it's impacting us. So therefore, we need to first understand how the self-awareness piece is so key. And self-awareness may come from either you observing yourself of how you see yourself, or working with a coach who can help you observe also how you talk about yourself, what you believe is possible, what you believe is not possible, and therefore getting so much clearer on how you see yourself, right? So the way that I always work with my clients is when they tell me, we challenge their mindset, right? We challenge their mindset when we were talking about transitioning. We challenge their mindset in terms of, okay, let's say that in 1 year, I always like give the 1 year period because it's long enough time to create concrete results, but also not too long so that we get lost in what we're wanting and how we're wanting it. And then I challenge them to say, so for instance, they tell me that they would like to have a relationship and work in the private sector and making more money than, or making the same amount or even less, right? Oftentimes humanitarians come to me and they say, it's okay if I have like 2, 3 thousand per month salary, then I'm okay and do the other things and be with my family, even though their current salary might be 7K or 10K or even more, right? And then I challenge them and say, okay, why not have the same salary that you have now, the job you love doing, and being with your family in 1 year time? what comes up, right? And then they will tell me all of the ways of how this is not possible, how the skills are not transferable, their experience is not valid where they're going, how they don't think that it's really possible anywhere else. And then when we start saying these, when we start uncovering these limitations, then when we start questioning those limitations, we start understanding that it all comes down to how we don't really see ourselves as someone who can replicate the salary. We don't see ourselves someone who can make the transfers of those skills happen. We don't really see ourselves someone who can actually aspire for more even salary than what we have now. We don't really see ourselves that way. And then we start understanding why that is, right? Why do we not see ourselves that way? Why do we believe that our identity, our capacity, our ability is only tied to this organization or to this structure? And as soon as we get ourselves outside of that structure, why do we believe that we just have everything fall apart, or we don't really have chances of replicating it? We don't really have the ways to do the job that we want to. Why do we believe that? And then we start understanding that the reason why we believe that it's all not possible is because we don't really see ourselves people who actually make those things happen. We don't really see ourselves as people who can guarantee our own success. Again, we did it once or several times already. Now we can do it again. We don't really see ourselves that way, right? We see ourselves as someone who did it once or who can do it in this setting, but we don't see ourselves as someone who can do it in any setting, right? And that's what we start uncovering. And that's where the identity issue starts coming up, meaning that we don't really trust ourselves and we don't really see ourselves as someone who can guarantee similar salary or more going forward to another setting. And the reason why we don't see ourselves, we just believe that all of what we have achieved is thanks to the employer. We don't think of it as all of this was possible thanks to ourselves, our skill set, our the way that we have arrived where we arrived. We don't really attribute it to ourselves. We just attribute it to the employer. And therefore, as long as we don't see ourselves as being someone who can guarantee what we want, who is able to create those results and their salaries and the being with the family, as long as we don't see ourselves that way, then obviously we're not going to transition, right? Then obviously we're not going to even try to go for it, because basically we're telling ourselves we're not competent in doing the things in our own way, right? If we believe so, let's transfer this to another person, right? So imagine you are a manager and you are describing one of your supervisees being incompetent in getting that result achieved. You will not even trust the task to that person. Or maybe even if you do trust, or even if you do assign that task to that person, you may then ask someone else to assist that person, or you may check up on that person, right? You're not, because you believe that that person is not competent or capable of making that result happen, delivering that aid, or providing that service, or a legal aid service, for instance, right? Or working with the government. If you don't believe that person is competent in doing that and accomplishing that task, then obviously you're not going to assign that task to that person. And the same goes for yourself when you're transitioning, right? You are not assigning this transitioning to yourself because you don't believe that you're actually good at it, or you don't believe that you can do this. You don't believe that you can guarantee this result, and therefore you're not going to take the risk. You're not going to even entertain that possibility because you just told yourself that you can't. And that's why how we see ourselves is so key in transitioning, is that as long as we don't see ourselves as someone who can do this, who can create these results that we want, or even at least try our best to go all in for this result. If we don't see ourselves that way, then we're not going to create the outcome we want. We're not going to even go for that transitioning. So that's why, my dears, I am doing this group coaching specifically only on focusing on humanitarians, on building this identity of becoming or being the person who actually makes this big transitioning happen, and not just settling for the less because we're afraid that we can go for higher. Excuse me. But going all the way to making the exact transitioning happen the way you want it. And in order to do that, we need to start seeing ourselves as someone who can do it, as someone who can do not only this, but a lot bigger results, a lot bigger visions, because of all the skills that we have, because of all the ways that we are able to create the results we want, because of all the ways that we have shown to ourselves how capable we are, and now we're going to even go further in creating even bigger results, right? If we don't see ourselves that way, then we're not going to be able to transition to taking those risks, because every new uncertain situation for our brain will be felt like a risk. And in order to confront that risk, in order to even take that risk or even consider that risk, we need to see ourselves as someone who can do that. We need to see ourselves as someone who can not only do that, but also can learn the necessary skills and go for the thing and exact the way that we want to. We need to see ourselves that way. And if we don't do that, then we're not going to transition. So that's why I would love to invite you to this group coaching where we will be working exactly on this, as to how are we seeing ourselves now, how this is impacting us now. And if we don't like the impact of how we see ourselves, then we need to start changing those belief systems so that we can get to being someone who actually can make this transition happen, being someone who's actually able to even guarantee this transitioning happen in the way that we want to. And we are able to learn and transfer the skills, doing all the things necessary to get ourselves to being in that place where we can then live the life we want to, making the impact we want to, while doing this, getting well paid and being with our family members, right? So this is the transitioning we're going for, and therefore I highly recommend that you start seeing how, like, you start observing yourself, how you see yourself, and also observing how that's impacting you and the way that you're showing up and the way that you're thinking about transitioning. And then how do you want to change those, the way you see yourself? How do you want to change your belief patterns so that you can then go to being the person who makes this transitioning possible? So I would love to invite you to come and join my group coaching for this, and getting yourself to a great environment and safe environment where we work on this exact topic and so many more, so that you have everything and every tool necessary to transition and make your transition successful. Have a great week, everyone, and I will talk to you very soon.